Well, the question is, was the President of the United States making some kind of a veiled hint to the Indian government, or are we reading too much into this? Our first guest tonight is Mr. Gopalkrishna Gandhi, former governor of West Bengal and Mahatma Gandhi's grandson. Mr. Gandhi joins us tonight from Chennai. Sir, how do you look at these comments that the US President has made for the second time in 10 days? Do you think that these are significant comments that are sending some kind of a message to the government here? Or do you believe we're reading too much into it? Because in today's or yesterday's speech in particular, he was talking about, other countries as well. He was talking about the world, even about religious intolerance in the United States. So how do you see it?
We should not look at President Obama's statements, the first and the second, as veiled messages. He is not the kind of person who sends indirect messages. I think he speaks his mind very clearly, but he is not the first American to do so. I would say we are strangely remiss in not connecting what President Obama said about India and religious tolerance and the impact of Gandhi and the value of Gandhi, not linking it to what Martin Luther King Jr. said in the same vein, almost using the same words when he was here in 1959 and later when he accepted the Nobel Peace Prize. We should not forget also that President Obama is a Nobel Peace Laureate, and as such he is saying something which many Nobel Peace Laureates have said. This is no veiled message, this is no criticism, it is a thought partnering, it is a thought sharing of a very valuable and important thought to India. And that thought is immensely important to us today, because while I agree completely with Finance Minister Jaitley when he says that we have had a long tradition of tolerance in India, the time has now come to note the great intolerance in the speeches and the writings and the actions of people in the recent past. These are not symbols or reflections of tolerance. These are speeches and actions and suggestions of intolerance and worse. They are seeds of distrust. I do not think we should look at President Obama's statement as veiled threats or criticisms, but just as honest reflections like Martin Luther King's were. He has the moral authority to speak the same language as Martin Luther King did.
So
we have
what
to
you're
now
saying,
go
sir,
beyond what Obama said. We have to go beyond what Obama said and reflect on what the situation in India today is, and it is a very important statement that he has made. That's how we should look at it.
So therefore what you're saying is that the timing is important, because and the fact that you're saying it's very much about the India today, the context of India today. There are some who would say, when you look at his comments were yesterday, he talked about India the past few years. He wasn't necessarily referring to the past 8-9 months in India. How would you respond to that?
We are being observed by the whole world, and we are not observing ourselves enough. The fact is that the culture of intolerance is being constantly disturbed by the actions of intolerance and suggestions of majoritarianism, of intimidation of the minorities, and of the disruption of the plural vision of our Constitution. Things like dismissal of the Christmas Day and converting that into a Good Governance Day, the Ram Haram controversy, constant reflections on how on Hindu Rashtra being really the true Indian nation. These are very disturbing trends, and let us not befool ourselves. The world is watching us and seeing how we are going, and I think we must today decide on whether India is to be a Hindu Rashtra, which means that non-Hindus are sectarianally, communally, ethnically, theologically, religiously in one corner, or whether we are the plural society which the preamble of the Constitution of India expects us to be. The Hindu Rashtra idea is part of the two-nation theory which Pakistan fulfilled in the creation of Pakistan, but the Hindu Rashtra idea of the Hindu two-nation theory espousers is still a very active threat, and we have to counter it.
Mr. Gandhi, one more question though, that those who are critical of Mr. Obama and his statements over the last 10 days or so have criticized America's double standards on these issues. They're saying, why doesn't he offer this kind of advice to, say, Pakistan or to, say, Saudi Arabia, the country which he visited after India? I often say to those who make that argument that there are higher standards expected of India as a democracy and as the land of Gandhi. Would you say the same?
I would say let us not get stuck on President Obama's statement, on the rights and wrongs of it, on the inadequacies of it. We have to see if it fits our head. Is that a cap which fits our head? And if it does, we have to examine ourselves and use what he has said as what Martin Luther King said and what Mandela said. When Mandela talked of South Africa as a rainbow nation, he was deriving something from Gandhi. So are we a rainbow nation today, or are we becoming a nation of just one color? We have to ask ourselves this question, moving beyond what President Obama has said, thanking him for having made an important statement, but not getting stuck with his words or his intention.
Right.
He has no intention to criticize us, but we have a duty to be self-critical and to take what he said forward for our own good.
All right, Mr. Gandhi, I thank you very much for taking out your time and speaking to us tonight. I'd like to go across to our panel this evening, and first to Swapan Das Gupta, who in fact weighed in on the first round of comments that we saw from the US President at City Fort. Swapan, you in fact wrote a column as well saying you believe that at that time it wasn't just an innocent remark that the US President made. How do you look at this latest comment then?
No, I didn't look at it as absolutely an innocent comment. There was, if we go back to his City Fort speech, there were a lot of things which he said which was completely unexceptionable. He spoke about that economic prosperity necessitates a degree of social harmony. I think no one would disagree with that. But when he weighed in and invoked Article 25, and Article 25 was invoked not necessarily because it is there in the Constitution, but because there is a controversy centered on it. And that controversy was all about conversions and the right to convert, etc., etc. Right. So, yesterday, or was it the day before, was one of the official American spokespersons suggested that there is no political context to Mr. Obama's speech. But then this was followed by Mr. Obama making this gratuitous comment again on the quality of India's sense of tolerance. To my mind, it is an intervention on the part of the United States to uphold what it considers is its ideal of religious freedom. And that ideal of religious freedom, in my mind, is woefully very one-sided. Because in their official category, India is lumped along with Afghanistan as a place where there is a very, very mixed record. Now, notwithstanding all the shortcomings there may be in India, and I'm sure there are many shortcomings, I think it would be highly erroneous in my mind to actually say that India is any way resembles that of the intolerance, the sectarianism which we witnessed in Afghanistan. I think Mr. Gandhi, who spoke before it, was entirely right in suggesting that in invoking that speech of Martin Luther King in 1959. Now, 1959 was at the high noon of Nehruvian secularism or tolerance, or call it whatever you want to. And if at that time Martin Luther King felt it important to talk about that, was there a context to that? Some people would say, no, there is no context to that. He was just talking about Gandhian ideals.
It's interesting what you're saying.
Now, Mr. Obama, for whatever it might be worth, may have shared the same Nobel Prize, but he is not Martin Luther King. He is a practicing politician who is got very much America's agenda on his mind. To me,
You
this
believe
does
it's linked
not
to his
necessarily
domestic-
signal a deterioration in Indo-American ties.
No, so you believe
Yes,
it's linked to
he
his
was
domestic
playing to a
political,
certain
there's a domestic
domestic audience.
political constituency that he's addressing. Sudhindra Kulkarni, I know you tweeted very strongly about
Absolutely.
this. Yeah, no, so I want to ask Sudhindra Kulkarni that, you say that we have to take Obama's lament seriously. There are many people today who also feel that these comments are a little patronizing. Do we need advice from the US president on religious tolerance or intolerance in India? They have so many problems perhaps that they need to address. Or is this a reflection of a reality, of a certain reality in India that we are very uncomfortable talking about? Mr. Kulkarni.
There are two ways of looking at Obama's statement. Mahatma Gandhi would have been shocked even more at all the acts of violence that the United States of America has perpetrated in its wars of invasion and other ways, different parts of the world in which hundreds of thousands of people have been killed. So not everything that the United States does is very moral, but I think that Obama spoke less as President of the United States of America and more as a friend and admirer of India and India's traditional ethos of tolerance, of pluralism, and hence expressing concern about growing religious intolerance in India and how it would have shocked Mahatma Gandhi, for whom Obama of course has enormous respect. I think that we should not shoot the messenger, rather we should ponder over the message. And the message is that, we must create India as a model for religious tolerance, for peace, for harmony. This is what the world expects from India. At a time when fanaticism is causing so much bloodshed in other parts of the world, India must become a beacon of hope. And this is where we are faltering. And Obama has said that all faiths have been doing it and all faiths are also victims of this kind of intolerance. So it's not that any particular faith is guilty and others are completely innocent. So all faiths, leaders of all faith communities, political leaders, all of us as a nation have to introspect.
I'll take that point to Sudhanshu Trivedi of the BJP. Mr. Trivedi, we heard Arun Jaitley's response to this. You heard what Swapan Das Gupta and Mr. Kulkarni had to say. As Swapan Das Gupta says, he believes it is a deliberate intervention on the US president's part for his own domestic political agenda. How does the BJP look at these comments today? Do you find them a little patronizing?
As far as the content of the statement of Mr. Obama is said, Finance Minister Arun Jaitley ji has made it very clear that India follows the grand tradition of intolerance. And I would like to add furthermore to that, in the entire world, the biggest example of religious intolerance is India. The only country in the world in which all religions are there, like Zoroastrians who have vanished from all over the world, they are there in India. The oldest church in India, all the 72 sects of Islam in India, and the birthplace of all the Eastern religions. So, the main cause of India's plural tradition, with due respect to everybody, is not only emanating from the constitution, it is emanating from our grand tradition. Mahatma Gandhi was also having the respect for this tradition and his vision was Ram Rajya. Somehow, subsequently, I would like to add what Obama has said. In the last not few years, last couple of decades, the thing has happened. Like the ethnic cleansing in the independent India in Kashmir, which has not been condemned in an appropriate manner by the entire intellectual and political establishment of India. So this thing, in a way, aided and abetted those fundamentalist and intolerant forces that created an environment of hatred and number of things from Shah Bano case and other things. But as far as Obama's statement is concerned, I don't think that he was trying to put a finger in that manner to India as it is being projected.